Hey everybody, welcome to the final session of Athena before this evening's awards. Very excited to be joined by Sonya Barlow, Baiba Ziga and Rose Hitchcock, as well as our very own Jess Rush, who will be facilitating the panel. So Jess, I'll hand over to you and you can take it away.
Thank you, Alex. And Sonia, thank you for joining us. I know you've obviously been in back-to-back, but good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. As Alex said, it is this is the last discussion of Athena Hack before we go to the prize ceremony later this evening at 6 UK time. For any of you that haven't seen me on any of the sessions before, to be fair, I think I've only been on the one so far, but I'm Jess, the sales lead here at Showcode. On Discord, if you've been taking part in the discussions on that, I am known as Pink Fizz. So keeping you all happy on Sunday with my GIF update to keep you all motivated, because that's the only input I could really give that day. But thank you so much for joining us. Today I've got a truly inspirational lineup of speakers. Really excited to see what conversations we're going to be having, because we're going to be discussing about how diversity drives innovation. And I know all three of the panelists joining me are very passionate about diversity and will have a lot to say, I am very sure. So to get things started, let's do some introductions. Rose, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Rose. I'm a director of engineering at Bumble. I just recently joined there, so I'm very excited to have moved there. And previous to that, I was working more on the e-commerce side for the majority of my career.
Perfect, thank you. Baiba?
Thank you. So my name is Baiba Ziga. I am the founder and CEO of Lake House Consulting, which is a diversity and inclusion and equity consulting company. Ironically, I've spent for my sins the past sort of 10 years of my life in large American corporates. So as I departed from the last engagement, I finally did what I wanted to do for many, many years, actually start my own company, because I had been doing diversity and inclusion in the shadows and from sort of dark corners of different places. So it was great to finally formalize it and, unite my sort of passion with a day job.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And lastly, but not least, Sonia.
Thank you for having me, and sorry for being slightly late. I am back to back, ironically doing diversity and inclusion workshops, so I think I hopefully make up for it. My name is Sonia Barlow. I am an award-winning entrepreneur, founder of social enterprise and not-for-profit LMF Network. We have the largest mentoring program in the UK with 600 participants across a 6-month program to bridge the skills gap, especially identifying women and those from kind of ethnic minority groups that have been the most impacted, trying to get them into tech. Outside of that, I run my own diversity and business consultancy, having designed and delivered over 200 workshops alone in 2020. I've just I've just released my first book. It's to be published in October, which is really exciting, titled Unprepared to Entrepreneur. Outside of that, I have 2 TED Talks, and I'm extremely passionate about diversity and inclusion because, I come from a working class background, council estate. I'm a brown woman who works in tech, and continuously I've been told, you will never make it because you're not technical enough. And I think my life's motive now is just to prove people wrong, to be honest. So that's what I'm here for, and thank you for inviting me.
No problem at all. It's awesome. It's lovely to have all three of you. As I said, just touching again on, I'm really excited to see what we cover today. So I suppose let's kick off the main discussion. Now we've got the introductions all sorted. So I suppose, Rose, let's start with you. So obviously awesome company like Bumble, obviously been in the news a lot recently with the IPO, but building on your background, so specifically yourself, what was your journey into tech like?
So I never really imagined that I would end up working in tech, although I did do IT A-level. So I kind of had a bit of an interest in tech, but I was quite interested in STEM topics. I also did maths. And then I went on to do management science degree at university. But I guess my first step into tech was that I joined a graduate scheme out of university for an IT consulting company, and actually found that I really enjoyed working in tech. So as part of the kind of grad scheme, I guess it's quite standard. You get quite a lot of training and background in the area. And I got to work with a number of different clients or customers. And although in the end I decided that consulting and moving around so much wasn't for me, I really enjoyed what I'd learned about tech. So after a couple of years, I moved into industry, working at Yoox Net-a-Porter, which is an online luxury fashion company, where I worked my way up and kind of did a lot of on-the-job learning in technology. So starting with analysis and then technical project management, and then moving into more of a engineering management type position, and eventually into a leadership role. So yeah, it was never really a choice. It's just kind of evolved organically, but like I really love it, and I always now try to encourage other women to get into tech. And perhaps at school or at university they might not think that it's a place for them, but I tell people like what great options there are, the variety of roles, and also like the fact that it's pretty well paid compared to a lot of more female popular jobs. And I have 2 children, and I think working in tech is one of those jobs that's so easy to do flexibly. Like you can work often from anywhere, you can do a lot of your work at different times, you don't have to kind of be at a certain location or be on always at a certain time. So when you start to think about work-life balance, a tech career is a great place to get that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point to make. I think that's something that it's sort of touching on like the parenting side. Obviously, a majority of us want to like start families and so on. So, but it can always be seen sometimes in the industry. Like you kind of get like starting a family, like for women, it can be quite hard. Like people would just think, well, how am I going to navigate that? So definitely with the tech industry, as you say, like you can work whatever hours you want. Like, okay, there will still be meetings you need to attend, but overall, like you can pick up your computer wherever you are, maybe sitting in the Bahamas, but we can keep hoping. For now, I'll stick to Surrey.
I haven't got to the Bahamas yet, but I'll put that on the list.
So like I suppose touching on that then, like what are your thoughts on the current state of diversity specifically within the tech industry?
Honestly, I would say since I've been working in tech, I think for about 13-14 years now, I haven't seen that it's changed in terms of the representation of women a huge amount. I see so much effort and focus on the topic. There's a lot of initiatives that are maybe aiming at grassroots, at schools, at children who wouldn't necessarily have thought about a tech career. So I'm very optimistic that some of those initiatives will bear fruit in the future. But in terms of absolute numbers, I think it's been stuck at around 15 to 20% in industry average, since I joined. So that's very interesting to me that even with all of these initiatives, they're not necessarily bearing a huge amount of fruit yet. But I think one area I have seen a big improvement in is in the more senior roles. So I think there's been a lot more success in the drive to take women from the more junior roles and help them progress up the ladder, and companies recognizing that having a more diverse leadership team is really beneficial to their teams. So I just hope that we can start to see some of that come through in the numbers as well, and start seeing more like STEM graduates as women, and women starting tech careers and also staying in them. So what do we need to improve and change within the career path and within industry to make it a long-term career choice for people?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose sort of opening up that question to Baiba or Sonia, like what are your thoughts on the current state of like diversity as a whole, and also within the tech, because obviously I know you guys also focus on the tech industry quite a lot.
I can go first if that's fine.
Yeah.
So I very much agree. I started my life in technology in 2015, and I have to admit that technology as an industry then, even at university, wasn't like it is now. It was more like when I came out in 2015, I mean, we just started having roles like social media manager and social media marketing as an example, which is crazy to think. And now we have like chief meme officer. So we've definitely grown. But I fell into the world of tech because it was pretty much the first job that said yes to me. So it wasn't something that was planned or designed. It was desperation, being a graduate, having a degree and saying, what will I do? But I realized that data is so fundamental to us moving forward. And to Rose's point, as a total population, unfortunately, we aren't shifting the dial fast enough. One of the reasons for that is, and if I'm being really honest here, we need to stop giving brownie points and applauding businesses that have shifted it by like 1% or 2% in the last 5 years. 1%, 2% in 5 years, or 100 people is 1 or 2 people, right? It doesn't make enough sense. Two, a lot of because I'm doing a lot of research around this from an LMF perspective. So our research has found that less than 50% of people actually know what diversity inclusion means. So we need to open up these educational forums through community workshops like what we host and like these sessions to really educate people on what they can be doing better from the eye rather than the company itself. And lastly, when we're thinking about attracting diverse talent into the mix, the attraction should come from seeing yourself, believing in yourself. But I think now from doing the research, it's easier to attract talent, it's harder to retain talent. Because businesses are doing so much work to attract diverse talent. They're going to job boards, they're going to the communities. But what are they doing internally?
Yeah.
Are they doing enough? Are they promoting you? Are they progressing you? Is it fair? Is it flexible working? Is it remote working? A great example being there's companies right now that despite working remotely for 12 months have said, we need you back in the office. Who is that going to impact? Women predominantly. And as a South Asian woman, South Asian women, because actually if you think about cultural context, a lot of traveling, a lot of consulting, a lot of working in tech is not permissible because of the quote unquote stereotype that already exists. So to answer your question, it comes back down to one, educating yourself on what you can do better, what the industry can do better, and what we need to educate parents and families on how to enter or how to encourage their people into tech. I'm the first in my family to go to uni, and so I'm sure my parents don't know much about what I do or didn't, so it would be nice to bring them into the fold, and that has come through me, and so now they understand technology. They can convince my brother and sister to go into it, for example. Two, mentoring and coaching where possible, so really being the senior stakeholder or being that eyes and ears and being represented. And thirdly, when we talk about technology, we also have to think about what are you doing internally as a business for your people that already exist, not just for new people that you want to attract.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. The whole retention piece, it's not really being looked at the moment. Like, yeah, there's so much there about how to attract the diversity. But I think one thing I was reading recently, I think Baiba, actually, I think you shared this an article a while ago, but I think it touched a bit on that. And it was like tokenism, like diversity, like is it becoming very statural, like, oh, we need to hire X amount of people and X amount of that. But if internally they then come in and then they feel, I don't know, alienated from the rest of the business, then you're just going to be going around in this vicious cycle all the time. So no, some really, really good points. I think just had a question. I've seen that we're on the topic. I've just seen a question has come through touching on what you were saying, Rose, about the 15 to 20% plateau. Why do you think, after all of the drive and work done to bridge the gap, we are seeing this current plateau at the moment? I mean, I suppose that's an open question, doesn't have to be yourself, Rose, but any sort of more insights on that?
I'll just pause to see if Baiba wants to say anything on this. I'm conscious.
No, you go for it, and then I'll say a couple of words after.
I mean, from what I can see, I don't think that we've actually moved the dial a lot in terms of the number of people studying these topics at a higher level. So I think what we can see right now is that at the lower levels of education, primary school, high school, and kind of the amount of extracurricular activities aimed at young people, there's a lot. But I think when you look at how many people are still going through and completing things like computer science degrees, for example, is still majority male. There's still sometimes women find themselves as only 1 or 2 women kind of in that course. Personally, I would never have considered doing a computer science degree because I thought that people who were into computer science and coding were like obsessed with code, did it all day, played computer games all weekend. And if you weren't like that, coding wasn't for you. I think it can be quite off-putting to me as a woman, but to other groups who don't have that kind of same obsession with computers, and perhaps look for something a little bit more sociable. For example, they think that the degree topic or any kind of further education in that topic wouldn't be good enough for. So I don't think we've managed to make a massive change in that area. But like I said earlier, I am optimistic that with the amount of attention on technology and coding and things like that from such a young age, everybody, that we will start to see some of that coming through in the future. So I think that's part of it. And then I think the other part of it is, as Sonia was saying about retention, like we need to look at the kind of the cultures within the companies, because I think when you do get a certain amount of people at entry level, women or diverse groups coming in, a lot of them perhaps end up moving out into a different career area and trying to identify why that is. Is it because, you know, they don't find the technology course fulfilling for them, so perhaps, you know, they prefer a bit more human interaction? Or is it to do with the culture? Like there's a lot of press around like the kind of programming culture, and there's a lot, you can read a lot about how toxic some workplaces are, and I don't think that's, you know, the same in every company or anything like that. But I think when people see that kind of thing in the media, and or they've experienced that kind of thing, it might put them off the industry for good. So I think that's probably having some impact as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So, because I can probably talk from my experience in recruitment. So I've spent quite a long time in recruitment as well, and in talent acquisition. And I remember my early days working for, you know, various clients, and you often would get the hiring managers call you up and say, "I've got this engineering role, but I need a woman for it." And you'd be like, "Well, I can't make you a woman. I can give you a person who is fit for the job, but I can't make you no woman for that job, right?" And on one hand, the problem is, well, potentially there haven't been enough women through the system to, you know, be trained and be at that level to go into those roles. Secondly, those women potentially will have requirements such as working from home 1 or 2 days a week, or having some sort of, you know, childcare support, whatever it might mean, which a lot of these organizations, these traditional organizations, don't offer. And then the third thing is what already both Rose and Sonia talked about, is the retention. So even though you bring someone in and then you report on it and you're like, we've got a woman here, let alone a woman of color, right? And then you slap her onto every single marketing piece. But actually, what are you doing for her? How are you supporting her? And how are you creating opportunities for her to move up? And another thing, what absolutely boils my blood in this is that a lot of organizations would be, well, we've got these training programs for women to become leaders. And then you're thinking, so hold on a second. So I am probably just as or overqualified as some of my even leaders at this point, and now I have to go to an internal training program to maybe one day become a leader. So where is this double standard from? Because none of these leaders, these, you know, white males in this case, in most cases, have ever been through any internal training like this, and are not potentially even near as qualified as some of these women coming into these spaces. So we've got this double standard as well. So we have created, by wanting to do the right thing, we've created a lot of toxicity, a lot of silos, and actually a lot of reverse effects for creating a space where these women can thrive. Because women don't need a boarding card anymore. They don't need, you know, an entry ticket anymore. They need an opportunity. That's what they need.
Awesome.
I love that energy. May I jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
So the woman you're talking about was me, right? So I am a brown woman in tech. I don't want to work for your company. You should be worried about that. That's the truth. You should be worried that I don't want to work in your company. Why? Because I've worked in, I'm very honest about my experience. 2 out of 3 tech companies, I have parted ways with my company because I've been discriminated, but then I've been called the challenging woman. The same companies have told me you're not technical enough to be in tech. But to Rose's point, at Baiba's point, you don't just need technical skills. You need communication skills, you need creative skills, you need industry skills, you need professional skills. And lastly, in terms of retention, to the leadership point, oh, well, you don't communicate as a leader. Okay, so take me on a courses and finesse me, but don't make the excuses that this is the way it's been done for this group and it's not the way it's done for your group. The double standards do exist. And when we think about technology, it's the honest truth is the new generation of workers, they are fluid in their mindset, they're fluid in their thinking. They want sustainability, they want ethics, they want value. They want people that believe in them and their mission, but also understand that they might have a side hustle, they may have a passion project, they may have a child, or they may just have a life. How do you, as a company, support them in work-life balance, which is beyond just working 9 hours on a screen? Because if anything, the last 12 months have proven is people can do the work from anywhere at any time and get the work done. So I think we're also talking about something grander here, and we're talking about changing the way that we even address these roles in tech, because tech, despite having a gender problem, also has an ageism problem. Right? You over a certain age, you can't be hired because either you're stuck in your ways, or you're not progressive, or you have too many responsibilities. The point in tech is you've either too much or you're too little. That perfect doesn't exist. But in contrary, when businesses get something wrong, that lack of perfection is innovation, upgrading, is evolution. When you as humans get it wrong, it's actually you're a mistake, you need to get out. So when I share my story, when people ask me, why aren't you working in tech, or why are you doing X, Y, Z? Actually, the point is that the women that want to work in tech, if you mistreat them in any way, or the men, or any group of people, they will leave. But the worst thing for companies is they will not promote you as a company. And actually, personal branding and employee advocacy are really important. Just LinkedIn is an example. If your employee is on LinkedIn branding themselves personally, that can generate traffic to your company pages 10 times more than social media ads or impression. That's free press, right? If you have served me well as a company, I will stand on stages and I will shout about you. 83% of our purchasing decisions are made through word of mouth or recommendations or referrals. So why are your people not doing that? It's, you know, that there's a few topics here, but again, the onus and the responsibility comes down, one, on companies, absolutely, mental health check-ins, wellness check-ins, well-being check-ins, and then two, as individuals, we need to find our bravery and our confidence to challenge these systems and structures that already exist in a way that we think is not going to negatively impact us, but we can help create change. And much of that comes back down to who is the ally in the room, who is the one with the social power, and how are they going to support us, right? As a brown woman in tech and someone who's a junior, I know that I don't have that social power. So I'm looking for that person who's going to link arms with me and say, do you know what? I will take you through that door and I will fight on your behalf. That's what we're looking for.
Awesome. Yeah, I think really good points. I think there's a lot that definitely agree with everything you're saying there, Sonia. There's so much that needs to be done. It's actually fired off quite a few questions in the chat, some of which I can address now and maybe come back to a few others later on. But I think this one's maybe quite relevant to what we were just talking about. And it says, like, what best practice could you share for senior leaders to overcome social mobility challenges, especially in the digital consulting tech world?
Well, one of the things that I think leaders in general can do is because all of this work begins with calling in. It begins with looking at yourself. It begins with looking at your ecosystem before you can start pointing fingers at what government is doing wrong and so on, right? So it's about, what are you doing within your own internal ecosystem in terms of, your policy, your appraisal processes, your promotional processes, and those sort of things. Because World Economic Forum a while ago released this sort of funnel of how people move through this funnel in terms of the entry level all the way to sort of C level. And it was split in terms of gender and in terms of race. And ultimately what you get, so focusing on gender specifically, you get the same number, pretty much the same number of women and men entering the funnel, but as they go through, somewhere at the sort of director level, the number of men moving through doubles and number of women halves. And it's even worse when it comes to ethnic minorities. So then the question is, what happened there? So if equal number of qualified people entered your organization, but more men were promoted, what happened there? So first and foremost, before looking at governments, looking at someone, coming in and helping with a solution, this is not a shop, you can't go and buy something. You got to go and do the work. And this is not work where you can pick and choose who you're going to be, advocating for. When it comes to diversity and inclusion, you have to do the work for everyone. You've got to do it for the right reasons, whatever the right reason for your unique, organization might be, whether it's a moral compass or whether it's, financial benefits, but you've got to do the work. And this is work that you have to consciously and proactively embark on every single day for the rest of your life. This is not a sort of a diet where you lose 10 pounds and then, gain another 20, because that's what happens, right? It's a lifestyle, it's a thing that you embark on every single day. And and even now, I, for instance, get messages on LinkedIn asking, oh, we've got a diversity and inclusion program manager role. And I'm like, what? How is diversity and inclusion a project? It's not a project, is it? There is no end date to it. It's a journey. So stop calling diversity and inclusion a project, because that's exactly, so if you do, you already are not doing something right. So there's a lot of things that you have to start looking at internally of what you do, how you talk about these things. What are some of the appraisal processes? Because even from appraisal point of view as well, you might have two equally qualified candidates, one female, one male, but in terms of how they've been appraised and evaluated will be very different, because a woman would be, you're very likable, people love working with you, you're very kind, and a man would be, you did a great job with promoting this product because you increased our profit by 15%. So it's very, very specific about what they do, where it's very watery about what woman's contribution has been. So I also start paying attention to that language. So there's a piece of audit that needs to happen, a lot of calling in and looking at those ugly bits within.
Yeah, and just being honest.
If I can add to that, if you're looking for like specific things, especially around social mobility in tech, one of the things that I think is important is if you can't find the diversity and the talent that you need on the market, because we're kind of stuck at around this 15-20% mark, I think something that senior leaders can focus on is to try to create that talent. So find people who you could develop yourself. And it's really important not to just leave that to people who perhaps have already got the inspiration or the motivation to go to university, for example. They will probably already go and get a job in technology. So think about how you can find people who would never have taken this opportunity, whether that be school leavers or people later in their career who want to have a career change, and think about how you can fund them within your organization to retrain into technology roles, so that it doesn't just become about the people who can afford to pay for themselves to do tech training, go to one of these academies or something, which can be quite expensive, or somebody who can be a very low paid intern for a year or two while they learn their tech skills. Actually put your money where your mouth is and think, we actually want to get the best potential candidates. So we'll make sure that it's never going to be chosen for them based on what they can afford. We'll make sure we pay them a decent salary. We will train them and we will be part of the solution, rather than just trying to keep sucking this 15-20% that get the same approaches constantly because they're so in demand, because everybody wants diverse hires. Like, I think really industries need to start being part of fixing the problem.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry. And if I could jump in there. So through the network that I run, we actually did a social mobility research report. And we found that the top 5 reasons as to why candidates feel that they cannot join in anywhere, or they feel that they cannot get involved. One of the reasons is imposter syndrome. Sorry, I just have a cup of tea coming. So
Important.
Just standing there a second. One of it is the lack of confidence. The main reason that came out was imposter syndrome. The third reason that came out was the lack of negotiation skills. The fourth reason that came out was the lack of understanding on what these tech careers actually do, right? So a great example being a consultant. What does that even mean? Because it's not something that we're taught in school. No one's taught, oh, you're taught you can be a policeman and a fireman and you can be a president. Like, these are tangible, right? What's a consultant? So the point is, we need to start thinking about skills rather than job titles. The second point is, if from our research we found that people are suggesting that they don't feel confident, what are companies doing to boost their confidence? Are you giving them the interview questions beforehand? Are you telling them what the process is? Are you making your salaries clear to begin with? I've been on 7 D&I workshops this week, 7. Each one, I promise you, has come up with, why do we need to make salaries transparent? Each one. You need to make it transparent because it negatively impacts women and women of color, especially, who do not feel confident enough to go for it in the first place. I'm sure we can, we can all speak on behalf of that. And the third thing is the research has shown that once people get into the technology industry, you're more likely to give people time who look and feel like you. So if only 15% of the tech industry are women and 85% are men, 85% of men are very unlikely to go then give the women the time that they need for investment, for leadership, for coaching, for mentoring. That's why external mentoring programs like and blind mentoring and supporting is really important. The fourth point, stop going to unis that are top 10 in the country. I come from a top 10 uni. I know I'm going to get a job, right? You don't need to help me. Honestly, you need to help the other universities that unfortunately don't get the support, even though they have the talent. So I used my own example. My brother went to university closer to home because he didn't want to commute 90 minutes. He got a better grade than I did. He, you know, it took him longer to find a job because he came from a lesser university. That doesn't make any sense. Culturally educate yourself. As a South Asian woman, I wasn't allowed to go to Oxford. I wasn't allowed to go to Bath. It doesn't mean I didn't have the grades. It meant my dad didn't want me to live out. That was it. There was no questions around that. There was no two ways. I couldn't leave. That was it. Okay, so what do? You go closer to home. So if you're looking at these hubs or where like ethnic minorities or those who need the social mobility, go to the education, the colleges, the youth, the schools, the primary schools, the universities around there, because the talent does exist. I hate the excuse the talent pipeline doesn't exist. I think that's a lie, honestly. Come and talk to me. I can tell you where they are. But if you're not looking, then that's on you, right? The greatest thing about remote working is the barriers have opened. I always say London zone 1 to 4 is privileged. Zone 1 to 4, the businesses are there, the workplaces are, the opportunities are there. I used to live in zone 10, so I'm not even technically in London. It used to cost me £20 a day to get into London for a job interview or for a work experience or for unpaid work experience. Where am I getting £20 from? My parents are first generation immigrants. They don't have that kind of money. So even for these roles, what are companies doing to help support candidates in travel, in expenses? I'm not saying it's that easy, but I'm saying I've been in a situation where I did a half-day unpaid company onboarding before I even got the job offer to see if I could be a part of the culture fit. Unpaid half day, if you think about it, that's like at least 50 to 60 pounds that you didn't get. You didn't get the lunch, you didn't get the train tickets. So I spent £100 trying to interviewing for a company that didn't give me a job role. How many of that can we actually do until we have no choice? Right, you can see I'm super passionate about this, and also I don't have a poker face. So whenever the energy Rose and Baiba is just sharing, I'm like, I can feel the change. So please also stop me and kind of get if I carry on, just because.
No, you've made such a great point, and I'm really pleased to be here because my partner's already sick and tired of listening to me about these topics. So I need to be part of a community like this. But both of you made great points. But the only thing I wanted to make, what Rose was saying about building your own pipelines, absolutely, because so this is what absolutely bogs me as well. So for instance, how many people were made redundant during the pandemic, and obviously most of them were women. So a great example was December 2020 when 140,000 people were made redundant in the US. Now, when you dig deeper, it was actually 140,000 women. When you dig a little bit deeper, it was 140,000 women of color, right? And then you're thinking, so hold on a second. So on one hand, you have got all of these initiatives saying we are hiring, women of color. We can't find them, and you just made all of these people redundant. So make this make sense. So why don't you recycle them, invest in them into skills that you will need in the future anyway, because the skills gaps that we have in the UK or wherever are absolutely huge, especially in the digital space. So what are you doing about that? And you've got all of these women that could have been part of that pipeline just exited your organization and won't be coming back.
Yeah, it's really mad. I think it's just having that platform for people to just feel as one, like touching on what you were saying, Sonia, about universities and the way that companies, they have like their short list of universities. We only pick from these universities. And we bring this up because with Unicode, the university coding competition that we run, like I always just ask, like, so why? Like, why those universities? Like, if I was to tell you someone from this university that you don't look at gets a higher score within a technical test or something than someone from one of your selected universities, so you're saying you wouldn't look at them? Is that, well, our process wouldn't allow it? And I'm like, so you can't find the people you need to fill the jobs, but you won't open your eyes up to what is out there. They are out there. Like, there's so many great young talent coming through. You then got awesome work being done by the likes of tech returners who are helping people who've been on career gaps to come back into the industry. There's awesome organizations out there doing great work. So you just need to just do some research, and it won't take you long. I mean, there's 3 of us here. The 3 of us have never met in person, but there's 4 of us here. Sorry, why am I saying? It's because I'm with 3 of you. There's 4 of us here. We've never met in person, but all of us here can list things off the top of our heads very easily that we know that companies could look at to help them boost their talent pipelines and to connect with those that they say they can't find, because they are definitely there. And touching on that, there was another question that came through regarding the retention piece, and it's like, they've asked, so where do you think the women go when you mention they are not retained? Do they go to other companies, or do they fall out of the tech industry altogether?
All of the above, I think. And you know what's even more interesting? They start their own businesses because, right? Yeah, same here, right? So that's the thing, because we are not welcome in these spaces. We're not being invested in. So so when we're saying women entrepreneurs or women founders, we do that out of necessity, not out of because it's a fun thing to do and it's, and we love hustling because we've got nothing else to do. We don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I think as well, people do transfer out of the industry. So if they don't enjoy the job, they're working in tech, and they don't see a future for them in a kind of tech career path, they often will take a sideways move into something that perhaps uses some of their other skills that they have, whether that be kind of their people skills or their analysis or their business relationship skills, because perhaps they can see more women in those areas and they can see a future for them there. So I do know quite a lot of young female coders that I've worked with in the past, and I've often, after a certain level, decided that it's not for them and taken a sideways move out of technology.
Absolutely.
Which is great, but also a shame, isn't it? Because that removes those.
I'm like, no.
I know, because it removes those accessible and visible role models, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And to kind of just to echo, where do they go? They're still here. They're still on the planet. Still around us. They haven't like washed off, if that makes sense. They just do other things that you have to do. To that point, it comes out of necessity. Either you're, Peter, from research, and the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I am either this year or next year at some point in my life, I'm doing a PhD just on this topic. So I'm very about retention, and especially in technology. So if anyone's watching and they want to sponsor, they want to support, I am here.
Small plug.
Small plug. But no, but the point is, I'm passionate about it because actually, I never thought about this question until that happened to me. That's why, and I was like, wait, it's not that they don't exist; it's that they just don't exist anymore. Why? Like, why do they not exist? What have businesses done, and where have they gone? And I realized exactly they're either starting their own businesses or they have transferred their skills and they know where they can do something. Maybe they're doing something closer to home. Maybe they're doing something which they're not necessarily passionate about, but is giving them what they need. Then maybe they're going off and they are becoming the main carers for their families. Maybe they're traveling digitally. They could be doing anything. That, the question, I guess the question shouldn't be what are they doing, because they could be doing whatever they want. The question is, why are they not doing what they want to do? That is a deeper question when it comes to technology, because to Rose and Baiba's point, these people, a lot of women aren't leaving because they want to leave. They're leaving because something has kind of caused them to leave, and majority of that will be subtle discrimination. What we don't discuss, and what we don't discuss is workplace bullying and toxic cultures. It's not just a one-off comment, it's a subtle discrimination. So I worked in a company and they got my name wrong for 6 weeks. My name is Sonia. It's not short for anything. It doesn't have it's not coded. It doesn't have a pretend meaning. It's just Sonia. So of course I'm gonna resent you. I'm gonna be really unimpressed if you've got it wrong for 6 weeks, knowing you hired me. Right? It's subtle discrimination, like office banter and office jokes. Oh, when is, I'm not being racist, but my Indian friend just got arranged marriage. When's yours? I don't know if that's both appropriate or racist, or I don't know if that's office banter. The point is, we need to call out and keep people accountable. So where they're leaving and why they're leaving, that's an issue, but where they're going is an issue. But the bigger issue is, why are they leaving? And why do they feel that they need to leave? Because, again, when you're in technology, it's really difficult to leave income. You're leaving income, you're leaving money, you're leaving your livelihood. You must, some people don't have savings, but it gets to that point where you can't stay in that game anymore. That should be really worrying for society, that someone is willing to leave 30k, 40k on the table because they've had enough, especially when money is what we need to live, right? So I think there's such a deeper issue here.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's yeah, we definitely raised a lot of there is a wider issue here, and I suppose just looking at another, there were some more sort of general questions I was going to ask, but seeing that we've had quite a lot of chat going on, I think it's good to get these ones covered, because someone's asking, how do you think confidence and under applying for jobs plays into this, meaning like women, this is specifically about women. So it says, how can we then encourage more women to step up to their potential? And I think we kind of touched on this with I don't think it's the women want to, and we do, like, if we get given an opportunity, so going back on the earlier point, give us the opportunity and we will deliver. Like, I was very lucky that our boss gave me an opportunity, but at that point I was probably in one of the lowest parts of my life. Like, I didn't have a job, I was meant to be buying a house and thought I was gonna have to pull out of it, didn't know what was going on in my life, and someone just gave me an opportunity, said, look, we're starting up this new business, do you want to come join us, like in the sales team, like see what you do? And I was like, yeah, and gone for it. But sometimes those opportunities are not there. Companies can be very, I think, tricky in terms of their application process. That is one thing as well. I think application processes don't help. They're lengthy normally, ask way too many questions, which are really irrelevant to the process. But I suppose open it up to you guys, like I know we said about the opportunity side, but is there anything else that can be done to maybe support those and get more support those who maybe do lack in confidence, maybe from poor experience that they've had before?
I would say in terms of like women under applying, one thing that I've definitely worked on in the past is really trying to change how you advertise jobs. So try to minimize the number of required skills that you have, and keep that to the really key things that is absolutely needed for the job. And instead try to hire some people based on potential. So you can have a lot of desirable skills or nice to have skills rather than everything being required. Because a lot of those required skills actually, you can teach on the job. If it's experience with certain tools or certain ways of working, you can make that investment if it's the right candidate and teach. But some of the potential and the soft skills can be much harder to teach. So I think there's a commonly used stat that I think, women would only apply for a job if they're like 100% qualified, and men maybe if they're 60%. So I think it's about just reducing the amount of things that people feel that they have to apply for that job, down to the real bare minimum. Like, obviously, if there's a certain coding language that you use in your company and they need to be able to code in that language, that's fair enough. But if there's certain like deployment pipeline tools that you use, for example, they can be quite easily picked up and taught. If somebody has deployed code using a different tool in the past, this shouldn't be on the required list. That could be within a few months, they would be fine with that. So I think it's about being really self-critical in terms of any job adverts that you do, and making sure that you're really kind of keeping that required list as slim as possible, and kind of encouraging people then to apply with a bit more of a wider variety of skills.
I love that. If I could jump in, and thank you so much for sharing, Rose. A couple of things that I can give as real life scenarios. One, I understand that we had a race report in the UK. I understand that the government thinks unconscious bias training is not important. I do not believe that is true. Unconscious bias training is only important to help people understand that unconscious biases do exist, and to help them to understand how they can stop them before it comes out in actions or kind of, in communication. Everyone should have this training, not just leadership, but everyone throughout the ranks, so that we can prevent anything that may happen, from interview practice to job descriptions to kind of opportunities. Second, unfortunately, on the basis of that, and I'm sure Baiba can speak about this a lot more, but compared to a white, Western, Caucasian name, those who have Indian or Pakistani names or come from that heritage have to apply for the same role 60% more. Those who are Black or African, Caribbean, I believe the numbers are as high as 80. There are biases that exist within our own names. My name comes with a privilege, I understand that. So think about who is checking these CVs, who is going through the process. What does a process even look like? What is your criteria? The third, we've already braised it, salary. Just put salary and be transparent. It's really not even that difficult, but businesses are making it more complicated than it needs to be. Fourthly, think about neurodiversity. So I give a great example. I have an intern who is a South Asian heritage, and she's dyslexic. What that means for her is she already has a lack of confidence because she doesn't know if she could write. She can write really well. So she can write really well, but obviously she's never been given the support throughout her life to say, you know what, despite being dyslexic, you can write well. So she's found us, she can write really well. The point I'm trying to make is she's had rejections because she's had a spelling mistake or something doesn't deem right. Think beyond the box. Send send applicants questions beforehand if possible, where possible. Don't do exercises that take them through 7 interview rounds and expect like 3 presentations for like 3 hours each. It's not worth it. And 5, and most importantly, bring the human back into things, right? Like, we are all having a tough time. Everyone is having a tough time. Acknowledge that. Don't and kind of discuss. And the last thing I would say is for the woman out there or any diverse candidate, ask the questions. Ask businesses what they've done to look after their people, what their future looks like, what the opportunities are, because it's a two-way process, like a relationship you're dating in the beginning. See if that's a good match for you as much as a good match for them. And make them aware that you're not just going to take an opportunity for the sake of it. And I know that comes from a place of privilege, you know, kind of if we can take that aside, it's really important to be clear and to be important. But an example I wanted to bring is about 18 months ago, I did a workshop for one of the largest 4 consultancies in the country. And they were hiring for a candidate in their VR team. It was all men, and they wanted a woman. So I looked through their job descriptions, and to Rosa's point, they had about 17 requirements and they only needed about 5. So I asked them to change that. But the one that really shocked me was they said travel occasional. And I said, okay, can you go into that a little bit? What does occasional travel mean? And they were like, no, travel's optional. We just know that people love to travel and they want to stay in hotels. And so we thought we'd excite new candidates by saying travel is occasional. And I looked at them and I said, so you don't even have to travel? They were like, no, and you can work 3 days at home as well. I was like, nowhere does it say that you have a flexible working policy or travel is occasional. I go, if you think about it from a cultural lens or a gender lens, or just a life lens, some people don't want to travel. And when you think travel in Big 4 consultancy, you can't help but think, oh, they're just going to ask me to go to across the country the night before. I'm not going to have a life. And so my point is, take yourself out of it. Don't think about what I would like to read. Think about what the average person is going through right now and what they really want to read. You've probably mitigated a large pool of talent because you think that living in a hotel and traveling for business and having company expenses is really fun. But in reality, people are, and more people are becoming, or more and more people are comfortable with a lesser workload, a more healthier life balance. More people are living out of London, which means that they have less costs on a daily basis. Kind of from a stats perspective, families are having children later, so they have kind of more disposable income when they're younger and they're doing more traveling and so forth. So think about where the world is heading and see if you as a business and you as a business model and you as a recruitment kind of entity are heading in that world. And from an internal perspective, when it comes to opportunities, just talk to your people, right? Ask them what they want, where do they want to go, and build that progression plan with them and check in at least on a quarterly basis so they feel like you care.
Yeah.
That was a lot, but I think that was done in bullet points, so whoever's listening hopefully can take that away.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's really answered the question. I'm really loving the answers, guys. I knew this conversation was going to go well, but I think this is it's been great, like hearing everything. I don't know, you guys, are you all right for timing? Because I know, like, we've got, like, technically we've only got 4 minutes. If you've got, I've got other things to go, but I mean, if you've got things after, let me know. Otherwise, we can carry this conversation on. If the 3 of you are happy, or
I'm okay to stay for a little bit longer if needed. Roses, right? But okay, cool. Do you mind if I quickly make a quick point also, just to build up on what Rose and Sonia was talking about, hiring, just because obviously I've been in talent acquisition for such a long time. So just a couple of sort of takeaways, I'm not going to expand on them too much. It's first and foremost, train your hiring managers and your interviewers to be hiring managers and what it actually means. Do some training there. Ask the same questions in interviews, regardless of who you're interviewing. Ask the same, standardize your interview process. Slow down when assessing profiles, because otherwise we are making decisions based on our reactions. They're very reactive decisions, and that's where a lot of our bias lives. And lastly, just about the sort of empowering women don't need empowering. Women have a voice, they just need opportunity. So, you know, because there's a lot of training based on empowering women, and the women have all of that. They just need an opportunity and a healthy environment where to thrive.
Yeah, No, it's a really good point. But Rose, I know you've got to shoot because you've got another meeting to get to. So I'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining us. Sonia and Baiba, if you're okay to stay on, we can, I think there's a few more questions that have come through, so we can cover those off for a little bit longer, if that's okay.
Thanks for having me, guys. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you,
Nice to
Rose.
meet you, Rose. Take care.
Thank you for great questions, everybody.
Thank you so much. Okay, speak to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
So Sonia, I suppose, like, obviously you started up the LMF network, like-minded females, which for anyone who is watching, I highly recommend you check out. But what, like, you've obviously touched on like your background and obviously first one going to university in the family and so on, but what was the inspiration for setting up the network? Like, there's obviously a need for it, like hence why we're running Athena. Obviously us on the call are all very passionate about diversity and sort of promoting women and those from underrepresented groups. But what was your inspiration? Or what made you go, I need to do this?
So that's such a great question, and let me give you the short answer. When I left university in 2015, I fell into the world of tech. I deleted all my social media. I was so invested in just doing good at work. Now, on reflection, for anyone who's listening, I realized that I was suffering from imposter syndrome quite heavily, and that I was just focused on work because I felt like I wasn't good enough to be there in the first place because of the comments that you have in work, right? So I got to 2015, I started my workplace. In 2018, I went from my first role to my second role. And I remember in my final day at my first job role, my managers didn't come to the workplace. I didn't get a leaving card. Nobody even knew I was leaving. And I was like, wow, I've given you 2 years of my service and no one cares. And I walked out super unhappy. I walked out sad, like you'd be sad, right? And then I remember thinking, wow, okay, so I've applied for this new role, and except my partner, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't really have any friends. I didn't have anyone that I could talk to careers about. No one in my friendship group really worked in tech. I didn't have technology at that point because I wasn't on any social media. So I reached out to a friend from university and said, look, I need to go make new friends. That was the honest truth, is I need friends of women who work in tech that can really get me. We went to a couple of networking sites, and unfortunately a lot of them were outside of my price range. I couldn't afford it. And so I just got really angry and I got really frustrated. I was like, do you know what? I can do this, and I can bring people together. So I reactivated my LinkedIn. I had like 100 people, and then I made this like group. And then 2 weeks later, I was like, do you know what? I love brunch, and they must love brunch as well. So I like created this first brunch event. I was like, everyone, women in tech, we're just going to come together. We're going to have avocado and chai lattes and talk about life. I was so excited. No one showed up. It was super sad. No one came. The first 3 brunches, nobody came. So I was just there being like, woman in tech. And what I realized was, one, from a personal branding perspective, why would someone come to this event that a woman's made when they don't really know what they're getting out of it? Who am I? Why should I care? Why should they care about me? 2, I realized that I had my own biases. 1, calling something like-minded females has its own biases. And 2, doing something brunchy because I feel like that was relevant had its own biases. So to answer your question, I just kind of carried it on. I thought, do you know what's the worst that can happen? I already feel quite kind of lonely. And so I just carried it on. Eventually, people started connecting on the LinkedIn group. Eventually, we did a workshop. We had 50 people attend. Slowly but surely, and this was, I would say, about August 2018. It got to Jan 2019, and I basically started my year with, I'm going to strategically wing it. So that was how I, like, my New Year's resolution was like, I'm just going to say yes to everything I think I can do 60% of, because that's what a man would do. And that was genuinely, it wasn't actually titled strategically winging it. My year was actually, I'm going to think like a man this year, but you know, it was more like strategically winging it. And so I started just doing events with LMF. I did brunches and coffee meets and cafes. We did workshops. We did this really good event called The Power of Community. And long story short, companies started realizing, and community members started realizing, they said, wow, okay, you're really creating a community culture. You're bringing different people onto the stage. We haven't seen this much diversity in one room. You also work in tech. You have a full-time job. You must know what you're talking about. And slowly but surely, that's fundamentally how it started. Last year, our Instagram got hacked. This year, our website got hacked. So we had to start from scratch, which just means it's a clean slate. And one of the reasons why we launched the mentoring program is because I myself benefited from mentoring, but in COVID-19, especially during the first kind of half of the pandemic, minority women and women were the ones who were the most impacted. And so they're the ones who need the most in terms of what you've asked, confidence and skills and you know, education. So we just wanted to, as a social network, we're 100% not for profit. So every donation or investment goes back into it. We just wanted to provide an accessible, educational, empowering forum, not to say to Baiba's point, it's not, we need to empower you. It's like, you're already empowered. How do we boost you? How do we level you up so that there's opportunities that we can then present to you so you can just thrive, right? So great example being our mentees have negotiated pay rises of 13K. Our mentors have been promoted. Our mentees have got internships where they wouldn't have before. They've had scholarships. You need to invest in your people. And I think to answer your question, just to loop it back, it started because I felt I wasn't invested into, and I could see how that was negatively impacting me as a person, as a woman in tech, as a career advocate. And so I didn't want anyone to feel the same way I felt. And that's purely where it started. I was alone. I was a loner. I had no friends, and I was sad. And what I realized was it can't just be me who feels like this. Other people must feel it too. And so today we're, over 35,000 in social following. We've been hacked twice. We've never paid for digital advertising or sponsorship. We have a chapter in Toronto. We've worked with large companies. We have the largest mentoring program in the UK. And outside of that, it's helped me to build my business as a D&I consultant, because holistically, I understand what the community want. I understand what corporates want, but I also understand how I can come in as a consultant externally and combat and create inclusive cultures. So that really is our story. And the reason we've gone from like-minded females to LMF network is for that same reason, is to be more inclusive, right? Eventually, I want to get to a point where no one asks what LMF stands for. And they're like, oh, cool, that network, we're just going to come along and that's as good as it can be. Because what we realized was 25% of our attendee list, our following, and those who support us are men, right? So why are they coming to a women's network? It's because at the same time there are biases towards men, and we feel like, oh, well, a man needs to be a certain criteria or macho in the workplace. He can't be feminine, he can't be emotional. And there's a bias against men as well. So as much as we have the conversation about women, we need to talk about the fact that we place a lot of identity politics, and we place a lot of stereotypes on men as well, and they want to be themselves, and whatever themselves means, but we feel because of society they have to be put in a box. And so cultures like recruitment and technology and finance, a lot of men can't be themselves because they feel like they have to be this version of themselves. And so hence why the LMF networks work so well, is because we base all of our things on life skills. It's not gender or kind of identity specific. And so when you think about life skills, confidence and imposter syndrome is a life skill that everyone's going through. Failure and being resilient is a life skill everyone's going through. And the topics around diversity inclusion, men are feeling it too. Like, what in the UK we assume that a man wants to spend 2 weeks with their new kid. That's our own biases. We need to think about paternity as much as we do maternity. But yeah, so thank you for asking that question, and hopefully I've given the answer and also a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it's no, really, really good. I think the main point, like the point there is like we just need to work more together. Like, I definitely identify with like we always say, like, obviously women, people say, oh, empower women, blah blah blah, but there's so many men going through their own struggles, and sometimes that doesn't get addressed. And to be honest, we just all need to be working more together rather than I'm this, I'm that, you're this. It's like everyone's living their own life. Like, it's how we can make everyone feel comfortable in their own skin is really the whole point behind sort of like diversity. And I think touching on this, and I think Baiba, I know you're very, obviously we talked a lot about diversity, but obviously there's inclusivity, and I know obviously it's something like I've heard you on talks before. Obviously when it comes to inclusivity, you do a lot of work with companies to help them with building a more inclusive and diverse strategy. But how important is it for businesses to build an inclusive environment? I mean, and like, what tips do you typically give them? Like, obviously Sonia's identified a few there with companies she works with where, first of all, like there's things there, they don't even make it clear in the job spec that there's flexible working and so on. But what do you work on with your companies, or what have you done?
Thank you for the question, Jess. And actually, I just wanted to, before I go into it, fantastic work with what you're doing with LMF, Sonia. I just want to commend you on that, and all the energy and the labor of love that you've put into it to make it to where it is. I think that's absolutely fabulous and very inspiring. So congratulations on that. Nothing less than that. But yeah, so yeah, thank you for the question. And the short answer to your question is inclusion in business environment is crucial. It is vital, not just important. But I would love to unpack this question a little. So you said having more, and we've talked about it, having more diversity in a team can help with innovation. Yes, absolutely. However, hiring people from diverse demographics won't guarantee you the stats that you hear. Like diverse and inclusive companies yield 30% higher profits, or by 18%, they get by 18% higher productivity, and so on. And what you see many companies do is they'll token hire these people and then sit around, twirl their fingers, and wait for their end of year accounts to come out to see this 30% increase that they have been promised through these stats, right? Doesn't happen that way. And there have been various studies conducted to determine whether more diverse teams in terms of age, ethnicity, gender deliver more creative and productive results. And Harvard Business Review have collected over 100 of such studies over a period of 12 years and found no such correlation, specifically associated with the diversity of our social identities. What they did find, though, is that it is the cognitive diversity what drives creative problem solving and innovation. And cognitive diversity being the differences in perspectives and information processing styles. So, for instance, a team mixed in terms of gender, age, ethnicity can still be homogeneous in how it prefers to engage with and think about change, for instance. So these could be, highly intelligent scientists from prestigious schools. However, in such group, there can be little cognitive diversity if there is no versatility in how they approach a task. So if a diverse team of people approaches a problem in the same way, there won't be much versatility and therefore increased productivity, effectiveness, greater value, profits, and all of those things that we talk about. I know this sounds a little bit controversial in terms of what we've been talking about, and also what we see in social media and around. However, there are critical cultural barriers when it comes to cognitive diversity. So, for instance, recruitment process that we've already talked about. People tend to recruit in their own image. And this bias is not only about demographic distinctions like race, gender, or age, but also we gravitate towards people who think and express themselves in a similar way than we do. And as a result, organizations end up with these like-minded teams, which psychologists call functional bias, and a very low cognitive diversity. But cognitive diversity is all around us. However, our society and systems push us to fit in, and we've heard that, so many times. And especially people from more diverse backgrounds will be less likely to stick their necks out of fear of being cancelled or that being held against them. When we have a strong homogeneous culture, we stifle the natural cognitive diversity in groups through the pressure to conform, and we might not even be aware of that happening. Hence, it's not just about cognitive diversity, but also a combination of cognitive diversity and psychological safety. So a psychologically safe space is where people can express themselves, their thoughts, ideas, without fear of social retribution. So social safety is a belief that no one will be punished or humiliated for speaking up the ideas, asking questions, raising concerns, making mistakes. Because what research shows is that actually teams with higher diversity but low psychological safety are the least productive, and they will be generating the least innovative products and therefore, profits and so on. So the question should be, how do you establish and maintain psychological safety with a cognitively diverse group? And this is where leadership comes in, right? But all that to say, yes, diversity and inclusion can improve productivity, profits, talent attraction, innovation, and so on. But it doesn't happen in void. It's not just about asking who's in the room. Has everyone in the room spoken? But also from those who have spoken, whose ideas won't be taken as seriously as others. Because when we talk about innovation, specifically, as part of the hackathon, innovation is a product of failure. And for failure that leads to innovation, it requires cognitive diversity that is unleashed by psychological safety. However, innovation can't happen in environments where failure, making mistakes is punished, where it's shamed and held against you when it comes to appraisals or opportunities. So yes, inclusion is important. However, inclusion is more than just a word. It actually means something, and it requires work that doesn't happen overnight. It requires a level of awakening in the business and within leadership community first and foremost, because inclusion cannot be created by simply mobilizing a project team that I talked about earlier.
So is there anything you want to add, Sonia? Or...
Do you know what? That was fantastic. And there is so much I want to add, but I do think that it may become slightly overwhelming for people. And that is by design, right? So I guess the only things I would kind of say to summarize that is follow us, see what we're sharing, take that back into your teams. If your leaders aren't listening, look at the publications, look at the free events, think about how you're communicating your efforts in ways that can be digested with the various different people within your business. To Baiba's point, diversity, inclusion, belonging, representation, authenticity, allyship, etc., they're all doing words. They're and there is no end point. There isn't. It's you start here and you're gonna pledge this for the rest of your life. That's the difference. Is diversity is not a tick box exercise, and nor can it be. It cannot be a side of the desk job. And I think my final point is the black, the brown people, the women in your business, they're not responsible for your D&I efforts. I am not responsible to set up the BAME committee because I am the BAME candidate. That doesn't make any sense. That just means that you as sponsors aren't putting as enough effort into it, right? So they can support you, but you need sponsors, you need budgets, you need investment, and don't have committees for the sake of it. A lot of committees exist just to exist. Okay, but committees need time, effort, investment. And the reason I say this is, again, in the last 12 months, I've had so many HR managers unfortunately reach out to me to say, well, we're getting the blame because our company is not diverse. We, a lot of people head up like pride groups or BAME groups. We're getting the blame because our company is not diverse. But actually, we weren't taken seriously. We didn't have the priorities. We didn't have the budget. So if you're going to do diversity inclusion properly, put a budget towards it. The same way that you have a budget for drinks, which is not inclusive, socials, which aren't inclusive, away days, like why does a team need a trip to Las Vegas? You tell me, I don't know. Put it towards D&I efforts, make sure it comes from the bottom up, include your people, make them feel like they should be there, and then your company will thrive naturally. But it also has to come from the bottom up. You have to ask your people. It's, one of the ways that I work through my own consultancy is I go and ask the people before I go and talk to leadership. Because it's important to get everyone's perspectives and to make them feel like they're a part of the wider business. But thank you so much for asking, and I think we've covered so much already.
Oh, definitely. I think, touching on your point there, I think asking people is definitely something that doesn't happen enough. Like whether it be external people or companies that deal with their own customers, they build things and don't really ask the customers what do they want. Like, so it's on both sides. So thank you both so much for joining me today. It has been a really awesome conversation. I'm glad that you've obviously got to meet each other, albeit virtually, but I'm sure you'll connect if not already on LinkedIn. If anyone, as Baiba was saying, like, please connect with both Sonia, Baiba, and also Rose. She's Rosemary on LinkedIn, if you are struggling to find her. But yeah, it's been really great, guys, and thank you so much to everyone that has tuned in. I'm sure there will be more conversations like this and when we host future events, and we'll keep the conversation going because you have to. It's the thing, as we said, it's not a project. Diversity, it's a part of life. We're all learning. There's been obviously some massive things that have happened in the news in the last year or so, and obviously there's a lot of movements happening. So fingers crossed we keep trying to move in the right direction, but companies simply just need to address their issues and not blame it on HR. And this, so thank you for everyone. I think Alex will tune in very shortly, so he can end the call, but here he is.
No, I was just going to say that was great. Like I could listen to that all day. So thank you both, as you said as well, Jess. Thank you to Rose as well. It was amazing. If you've got any questions, whether it's for us, whether it's for the panelists, watching retrospectively, you can let us know on our Discord. But yeah, if not, just a big thank you for joining us, and we look forward to the results in an hour or so. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Oh yeah, good luck to everyone. I am hosting that as well, so I'll go get a drink, a drink of water that is, sorry. And before seeing that, so good luck to everyone with those prizes.
Cool. Thank you everyone, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.